Yeah, I got it here. Okay, so you're
Okay.
playing white,
Correct.
and what tournament was this?
This was the U.S. Amateur Team North last year.
Oh, okay, cool. So long time control, yeah.
Yeah. Game 90 plus 30.
All right, let's take a look. So you got a French Winawer. Do you like facing the Winawer?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does.
No. No, I've thought about switching back to Knight D2 and just playing the trash or whatever
Uh huh.
to avoid the winnower.
Yeah, that's always made sense to me, but I mean, it's supposed to be playable for white. So let's see: Queen A5, Bishop D2, Queen A4, Queen B1. So around where did your knowledge end here?
After Bishop D2, Queen A4 is where I believe Knight out. Yeah, I right here.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so you was Queen B1 your own idea, or is this theory?
I don't think it's theory.
Oh, so did you
I
look
don't
it
think it's
up?
theory.
How white is supposed to play?
I did not. I analyzed this game a little bit after I played it. Actually, hold on. I'm trying to get into my file so I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking at the Lichess database here. Apparently,
Yeah.
Queen B1 is very popular. Queen G4 is also a big move.
Yeah, I remember looking at this afterwards, actually, come to think of it, and realizing that there were a few games that were played all the way up through move 12.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall looking at theory before this game and coming up with Queen to B1, however.
I see. I see. Yeah, maybe Queen G4 is something to explore. I think this is the line where sometimes white they induce some kind of weakness, and then a lot of times the queen just ends up going back to D1 very quickly.
Right.
There's some Caruana Naroditsky game maybe worth checking out. Actually, yeah, Caruana is the only player that seems to be comfortable against the Winawer. Just like always winning.
Well, in his defense, he's a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty good. But okay, Queen B1 it's a move. So C4. Knight F3. Oh, I see. This one is maybe a little bit unusual. I guess H4 is the main line here. And,
Yeah.
yeah, you put this
I mean,
in. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I'm looking at the study. I this kind of reminds me, in some ways, of the idea in the Carol Khan classical lines where you just throw the H pawn down the board.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the issue that I would have with a position like this is that the reason it wouldn't occur to me if I didn't know any of the theory, which clearly I didn't, to play the H4, H5 idea is I'm not really sure what the follow-up, what the plan behind that would be.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think usually the idea is to get like the rook to G3.
Okay.
Sometimes they play rook H4 if if the pawn is back on C5, and then you get some potential tension against the queen. But the pawn on C4, I guess the rook would go to H3, and then yeah, you put the rook on G3, and then it's kind of annoying, as far as I understand it. Although sometimes I think white even just goes like G4, and like especially if the knight comes to E7, then you're trying to stop knight F5.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a ton of experience in these positions because I used to play the French, but I never really played the Winawer because the positions look weird from black's point of view too.
Yeah, no, I when I played the French, I always played the Rubinstein, so I never
Yeah.
really looked at these lines from the black side, and I had only switched back to E4 shortly before this game was played.
Mm-hmm. So what made you switch back?
So I played E4 for most of the time that I was learning chess, whether it was as a kid or when I first started playing tournaments when I was younger. And then when I came back to tournament chess in 2011, I stuck with E4 for a while. And then I decided I wanted to get a feel for other structures and other plans and just be a more well-rounded player. So over the course of a few years, I switched to D4. And then eventually I mixed in some C4 as well. And then after a while, I decided I just now that I had the experience I was looking for, I wanted to go back with what I always felt I had my best results with.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think it's always good to switch it up a little bit and just get new familiarity, different structures, and then you find that it can be useful when you switch back. Okay, so knight f3, knight c6, bishop e2, castle, castle, and yeah, there's still some games here, some Yu Yang Yi game. Then queen b2. Okay, now we're leaving theory. Okay. So knight e7, b1. Yeah, this all seems pretty logical for white. I'm not sure if it's good, but it's consistent.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going for at this point was just to try and come up. The only plan I could see, it's funny because my pawns are pointing towards the king side. Everything tells me I should be, or everything you learn when you first start learning chess tells you should be heading towards the king side in that case. But none of that makes sense with the opposite side castling and me being on the king side. And
right.
So I just figured that, the only idea I could really come up with here was just to try and get some pressure on the queen side.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's quite logical. I mean, black's queen is on a4. It's kind of waiting to be targeted.
Right.
Okay, so f6. Then rook b4. Wow.
Yeah, I thought for quite a while. I recall thinking for somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 15 minutes. And after thinking for a long time, I finally realized that this just felt like a position to me where either you go for it or you don't. But if I don't play rook b4 here, it was just difficult for me to figure out how I could continue to make any sort of progress in putting pressure on the queen side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really hard to avoid playing this move, to be honest. But how did it work out in the game? Do you feel like you got enough?
I misplayed it. Eventually I misplay it and I don't follow up correctly. But yeah, I feel like it worked out great. There was plenty to be had, even though I didn't wind up taking plenty. Mm-hmm. But I mean, after this game, I showed it to a couple of stronger friends of mine, who agreed that while the follow-up wasn't optimal, the idea itself was sound. So this is one of the moves that doesn't normally feature in a game like mine because I don't have a good feel for sacrificing exchanges. Typically when I do it, it's out of desperation. But in this case, I thought I was going to get enough for it. I feel like I did get enough for it. I just didn't take what I got.
I see. Okay, cool. Well, that's good. You got the first step down, actually, like playing the idea, and then it's like, okay, just the execution sounds like it was off. But step one is already hard enough to reach, I think, in a lot of cases. By the way, what happens if black just goes back like queen a6?
I was looking at this game afterwards, and I was trying to figure out the answer to that question. And, I think at some point I have to just figure out how to, maybe how to sacrifice on c4. Mm-hmm. Maybe if I can ever reroute my knight and sack my knight on c4 for the two pawns to at least get some open lines.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be hard. I mean, I feel like...
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like if he retreats, then I don't know how else I can reroute things to cover this. I mean, all the queen side is closed off with the doubled c pawns.
Right.
From my minors.
I mean, I guess you could go back. Like, you have rook b2 in your notes, and then threaten to just play like a4. And then maybe even a5 somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, that seems pretty... Like, it looks like black can just play knight a5, though, right? Or am I wrong about that? Like, if I retreat the rook, mm-hmm. Whenever I play a4, can't black just play knight a5?
Yeah, I think they could. I guess I would then just be trying to, like, then like switch to the center, maybe like taking bishop f4 or something.
Okay.
Once
that
the
makes
knight
sense,
is
yeah.
like on a5. But honestly, I don't know. I mean, these positions are really complicated. But okay, I mean, he took, so I guess he felt like. I mean, honestly, it looks very scary for black, but I guess he was just like,
Right.
nah, I'll defend everything. Okay, so rook a3, f takes e5.
Yeah, and this is where I go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I recapture on e5, and I should just be putting my sorry, um, I should be play. I just should just be putting my queen on a1 instead of recapturing.
I see. Just queen a1,
Mm-hmm.
and then what's the actual threat with this, though?
Well, the problem that I run into in the game is that after I recapture the e pawn, he just plays king b7, and now there's no invasion on the a file.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I mean, okay, if he tries to play king b7, can't I then just take on e5?
Oh, I see. Like
I
this.
think I have the line in here.
Right.
I found this after the
95.
game with a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm. And bishop f4. Wow.
Right, right. Yeah, a friend of mine found this line with me after the game.
That's a move. That's nice. Uh-huh.
And the problem is that in this position, I just missed the fact that king b7 kind of stops everything.
Oh, here, after taking.
Correct.
Right. Because now queen a1, just rook a8.
Right.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, so queen a1. Trying to figure out what your opponent would do. So let's say he just goes e4.
Okay. Can I play knight e5?
Yeah, knight e5. Okay, let's say take. Or maybe you just get the same idea.
Right.
Okay, check. Yeah, I guess rook a7. And then next move, bishop f4. Is again really
Right.
annoying. Wow. So what does black do? Maybe rook f8?
Okay, let's see. What happens on rook a8 check? On a, no, I guess it doesn't work. If I okay, but can I take on e5 here again? What changes with rook f8?
Just hitting the, just stopping bishop
Oh,
f4.
bishop f4, yeah.
But I have a feeling you could even just play this position, and then just go like bishop e3 next. Because the
Right.
king is not getting out. Like, you always have rook a7. So this feels like a potentially big problem for black. Interesting. Oh, someone was asking about king c6, bishop f4, king d6. Yeah, I guess the king doesn't exactly get mated, but I think the compensation is definitely there. Because the dark squared bishop is just way too strong. Like, you can take on g7, or you can go like queen c1 and just switch to the king side. So it looks really dangerous for black. Maybe white has even something better. I don't know.
No, I think I would be happy in that position if the king winds up on d6 and I take on e5 with the bishop.
Yeah, you just have compensation there until the end of the game. So was queen a1 your only good move here?
That's a good question. It's the only one I found after the game, but I only analyzed this for a short period of time after the game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a game I've been meaning to go back and look at further. And then, like everything else, stuff just gets in the way.
Yeah, of course. Okay, apparently bishop g5 was also a decent move, but only because it's a tempo, and then the next move is queen a1, and white kind of gets the same ideas. So yeah, basically queen a1 was the only like super strong idea here.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, as far as the actual sack, I guess black could have defended better. Like, instead of fe5, could have played king b7, just to avoid these ideas. And then Stockfish doesn't really love it. I mean, I don't know, it is kind of... I feel like you're still getting a lot of play here. Okay, amazing move, bishop h6 is suggested, which...
Oh.
I mean... doesn't... A number of things doesn't make sense. Number one, why the move was suggested by the engine. Number two, like why the compensation actually appears to be serious. But yeah, I don't really get that one. But okay, if not that, then white would just have to find a way to continue some other way. I don't know, actually. But if not rook b4, then what to do here for white?
Yeah, ultimately that's what led me to play rook b4, even though it's not the type of position you can calculate further than a few moves of ideas, is I just couldn't see any other way to proceed.
Yeah, I think it was a decent practical decision. I mean, you did immediately get a chance afterwards, and yeah, like the moves the engine is suggesting here aren't really fixing white's problems, just like h3, rook b2, bishop f4. But these moves aren't really suggesting an actual plan. It's just kind of like waiting for black to like put the bishop on a better square and then get like the king side play going. I'm guessing the opening setup was just not ideal for white. Maybe so maybe this is what you kind of have to rework here, because it feels like that position is just difficult for white to get something going. So yeah, maybe these h4 lines would be worth exploring, like playing this early h4 or maybe queen g4. I don't really love the queen on b1.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Or at least maybe once black has played c4, maybe you have to find a way to get the queen back to the king side somehow. I'm not really sure. But yeah, the Winawer, it's like one of those middle games that's just like, you just need a lot of experience, I think, to handle them properly, and you need to look at a lot of games. But let's see how things progress. So okay, so you just took back king b7, knight g5, rook f8, bishop g4, knight takes e5, knight e6, and queen c6. Okay, I mean, still interesting. Bishop h3, that looks normal. Queen f6. Bishop e3, rook a8. Takes. Bishop d4. Yeah, I don't know, is your position bad here?
It can't be too bad. Right? I mean, I definitely have threats. I've got the bishop pair. f4 seems to be a reasonable threat.
Yeah.
Easy to deal with, but...
Yeah, actually, I mean, a lot of players, they consider two bishops and a pawn to be worth a rook and knight. So when you're sacrificing the exchange, if you have the pair of bishops and you have a pawn for the exchange, then materially speaking, you're basically okay, because the bishops are often really strong. Yeah, I mean, optically it looks reasonable for white, but I know it's like the game was over in like 5 moves, so I'm wondering like...
Oh, I'll blunder horribly here.
What happened? Oh, I see. So f3, h5, Queen e1, rook e8. Queen g3, h4, queen f2. And then... Okay, now, yeah, back rank... The back rank is becoming a bit of an issue.
Yes.
Queen d2, bishop f5, knight f3. Okay, and then it was over. It's a rook e1. Yeah. So then what was the blunder exactly?
F3 can't be useful there, can it? I mean, the problem is my bishop on h3 has no scope. I mean, not that it doesn't have any scope. It's got plenty of scope, but it's kind of starting to get trapped. And so I wind up playing f3, which I don't know. I'm sure there's somewhere I could have improved here. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean, you want your bishop on g2, so maybe in this moment, maybe g3. And before the bishop gets on d4, so knight f3 check is not really a problem.
Right.
Although, I mean, there is, like, check.
A move like... Okay.
And, like, taking on c3 or something.
Okay.
Well,
I was also wondering, instead of knight takes, what about just playing h5? Or sorry, instead of knight f3 check, what about just playing h5?
Oh, just h5 for black?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say bishop goes back.
And then can't he just play... Oh, I guess he can't play h4 straight away. Never mind. I guess h5 might not be as good as I thought.
Yeah, I think actually it's not that, like, problematic here for white.
Okay, so what about knight f3 check first?
Mm-hmm.
And then h5?
Yeah, possible. Let's say bishop g2. And then white just wants to play, like, queen d1. So...
Okay.
Well, I mean... Oh, yeah, actually, sorry. Yeah, I thought black is in time, like, g5, g4, but no, queen d1. Queen d1 hits d5 also.
Right. Oh, yes.
So black has to do something like, I don't know, let's say queen f5, queen d1, rook f8.
Is there any chance that this holds after queen takes d5? Or sorry, after... no, never mind. For some reason, I thought I was going to be able to trade the queen and the bishop for the queen and the knight, but that's just me hallucinating.
You can take here.
Right.
But yeah, that's probably not enough. Although b5 here, actually, just introducing the idea to, like, play queen a1.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, rook a8, queen back to d1. I don't know. Objectively, my guess is black is probably doing well, but white should have some practical chances with the two bishops and, like, the king being kind of weak. But I don't know. Maybe it's concretely not working. Let's see. Okay, Stockfish 10 gives queen d1 here. So g3... G3 was fine except for g5. Bishop g2. Knight f3 check. King h1 and then... Oh, just taking on c3. Oh yeah, actually I missed this as well. So taking and then rook a1.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So that is a problem. So queen d1 was apparently the move. Okay, hitting the pawn. None of the moves suggested defend the pawn, so that's confusing. Okay, only queen f7. Like the top move was g5. I mean, who would play this? It makes no sense. I guess the idea is take queen c6. And then there's a back rank check. And there's g4. So white has to trade queens and go f3. And then apparently white is actually okay in this endgame because your two bishops are attacking a lot of stuff. Yeah. Also, knight d3 is another amazing suggestion. But
Oh,
okay,
wow.
probably your opponent plays like rook d8 or something. Like I don't really know what else. Then yeah, like b5. Okay, then again you potentially threaten queen a1. So things are not so easy for black here, actually. Do you remember, how did you feel during the game? Like, did you think you were in the game? Did you think you were worse?
I thought I was in the game all the way until about the last 5 moves or so. After the time that I played f3,
Hmm.
I felt like it was slipping away from me in terms of, I just felt like I was starting to play without any sort of real plans or ideas, or, I almost feel like I'm just shuffling pieces around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you kind of pinpointed that right. This is basically where your position is no longer so good and starts to turn into, yeah, because now black just has very easy play with h5 and g4.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I think your evaluation was pretty much on point. Um, yeah, interesting. I mean, to me, it actually feels like a very typical type of French game. I think Gary said in the chat, a lot of times when you mess up the opening in the French, the position you get is just like almost unplayable. 'Cause it's like you're strategically worse and you don't have any like real active ideas. So anything you try is objectively going to be refuted. But if you don't do anything, then you're just sitting passively and waiting for black to take over.
Right.
I feel like your opponent played a pretty solid game. I mean, okay, he missed this like queen a1 thing. I think a lot of people would.
Yeah, I think if I find queen a1 here, I mean, obviously, I know I'm good because of the lines that were looked at, but
Yeah.
I think that the next step in learning to play these positions is just really appreciating the ideas for the defensive side, right? I didn't appreciate king b7 enough, and how it would change. Like, and I know a lot of this is that you have to see knight takes and then bishop f4
Right.
in this position to really see how it works. And I'm not thinking that that's necessarily something I would have found over the board from this position, no matter how much time I would have thought.
Hmm.
But seeing that at least after queen a1, king b7, knight takes e5, at least deflects the knight away.
Right.
Even if I can't see all the way to the end of that line, I think finding those sorts of ideas is where I need to get to next in order to feel like I have a good grip on playing these types of lines. Not that I'm going to play queen b1 anymore, but
Hmm.
I
No,
will
I
look
see
at
what
the
you're saying.
h4 lines. But yeah, I felt like I was fine through. Well, really through when I took back on e5 right away. Up until that, I felt like I was okay. Even later on, I didn't feel like I was much worse off, if at all. I thought that the bishop pair was strong. Again, it was really the last handful of moves where I really felt like I was falling apart because it just felt like I was shuffling pieces, and black's moves played themselves and my moves didn't seem to exist.
Yeah, at that point, I think the position is, yeah, getting really difficult for white. Here, the interesting thing though is like, so if you got to this position, you don't need to find bishop f4 to actually like keep the advantage. Like even if you go d takes e5, white is also better in this position, just because the dark squared bishop becomes really strong. Black can't challenge with rook a8, and yeah, queen on b5 looks very very passive. So it's like. Yeah, it actually isn't necessary to see until the end of the line, but at least yeah, spotting the idea is something that would have been nice. Although it's not a super intuitive idea, this queen a1. It's only you really have to force yourself to like look at it before it
Right.
starts to make any kind of sense. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Winawer I've always felt is super tough to play for both sides. Like it's easy to go wrong, but if you want to continue playing these lines, then probably some more analysis of these games or like training games I think would be really useful. Although I feel like that's just useful for learning any opening, to be honest. Just like playing out a lot of these different types of positions, you get experience, you see these types of structures over and over again, and you get to make a lot of like thematic mistakes in training games that you can hopefully avoid in tournament games.
Agree.
Yeah, but interesting game. Thanks for coming on and being like a guinea pig for this. I hope it was useful for you.
It really was, and I would encourage anyone else who's listening or watching to do the same.
Awesome.
There's never a downside to having somebody who's stronger than you look at a game with you, regardless of what level you're at.
Yeah, I feel like it's useful, and you usually have to like pay for it and so on. But I
Right.
think it's
Free is better.
yeah.
I guess technically I pay since I'm a Patreon, but it's not the same.
That's true. Yeah, for the moment I'm only doing this for my Patreon subscribers. But yeah, it's like $5 a month, so it's not
Right.
it's not a huge cost. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on. I want to continue doing this, so if I don't get a lot of interest from Patreon, then I'll just have you back and we can go through another game.
Sounds good. Hopefully you get a lot more interest.
Yeah. Thanks. All right. Well, I'll let you go now.
All right. Thanks, Kostya.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to you soon.